Hello, Dr. Rob.
Hey, Tammy, it's
So
springtime
it it is, and in
and
Arizona,
beautiful.
that's yeah. Like I used to be excited about that when I was in Michigan, and here it's a little bit like, oh, and the heat is coming. But hey, we've had winter, so it's been great. So I'm going to put the first question in answered, and then the rest of them I'll switch back to open. So the first question is, how is a sex addict able to treat their acting out partner so well while treating their real life partner so poorly while in addiction, ignoring no compliments, no romance, etc.? That's a great question and so painful. I hear the pain and unfortunately
I'm
it's
writing down a
common.
note about this. Um,
So sorry.
so, um, excuse me, I have gum and I'm not allowed to do gum and answer questions. My mom told me. So I think that, when I'm acting out with an affair partner or someone that I'm seeing regularly for some kind of hookup, you have to understand that I have no responsibility to them. I don't know them. I don't have to do the laundry with them. I don't have to watch them get fat. I don't have any responsibility. And all I'm doing is having sex and fun with them. So for me, in those moments, it's like, woo, this is great. This is fantastic. It's not like at home where things are difficult and I have so much to do and people are nagging me all the time. So I think in some ways, it's much easier for a sex addict to idealize that situation, that affair, or that hookup, or whatever, because it isn't real life. And then we compare it to real life, and that gives us a reason to say, "Oh, look how crappy my real life is with this person who whatever we say about you. So now I get to do this." So yeah, it works in a whole bunch of ways. It's not only done because we idealize that person and we are devaluing you. We devalue you so that we can go and do that. It gives us permission to say, oh, well, this person's a nag and blah, blah, blah. So I deserve to go do that. So I think there's two ways to answer the question. And hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I thought justification. I mean, just like you were saying, it's, oh, this is so bad, but look, I deserve to have, but it is not real life at all. And, there's no bill paying, garbage taking out, all those other things. So, okay. So next question. Now I'm back to the open one. So I'm a 55-year-old heterosexual woman, and my partner of 7 years is sex, love, and porn addict who just recently started therapy with a CSAT, so is very early in the healing process. His primary acting out partner, about twice a week for 3 years, has been his ex-wife, who never accepted their divorce and has been very open about still being in love with him and wanting to remarry him. She knew he was in a relationship with me during their affair. The sexual part of their relationship ended when I discovered it several months ago. My dilemma is this: my partner's ex-wife has multiple sclerosis and has some physical disabilities, cognitive issues, and emotional issues. To complicate things, she was recently in a terrible pedestrian accident, and though she will recover, it has been a long, sad, painful recovery. My partner has no problem immediately cutting off all contact with his 4 other affair partners. However, he has stated that he is unwilling. I'm sure this goes on right here to scroll down a couple, to cut off contact with his ex because she is the mother of their 3 adult children and because of her
So
health problems, blah,
what
blah,
are you
blah.
what's the
What
question
advice do you
here?
have for me right at the end? What advice? I
Well,
don't
well,
feel
well,
safe with her in the picture in any
uh-huh.
way because sexting was such a huge part. What advice do you have for me?
I think that you say you're not married. I think your partner is
No,
giving you all the.
no, I think they are married.
She said, I'm a 50-year-old
And,
heterosexual with
and
my partner of 7
my
years.
partner. Okay, yeah, it
So
doesn't
you're
say
not married to
married. You're
this
right.
person yet, or not. And I guess what I would say to you is, I think he is still married. And I think he is still married to the woman that he was married to before. And divorce is just a piece of paper. And, I don't want to go as far as to say that you got used for a few years while he was trying to figure out he wanted to go back to his partner. But I see, at least as I read this is someone who's already gone back to their spouse. They're caregiving for their spouse. They're engaged with their spouse. They're being sexual with their spouse, and she wants to marry him. So, I'm not sure what it is you have, except that something that's kind of a name only, because it feels like that other person is getting at least as much attention as you're getting, and that wouldn't be a relationship that I would want to be in. So, Tammy, did I get that right?
Yeah. To
It's
me,
a long question.
yeah, it is a long. There's a lot, and clearly, I mean, I feel sorry for the ex who's got lots of other health issues and stuff like that, but he knowingly, chose to do this. And clearly, he's a sex and porn and love addict and all of that type of thing. He's got a long ways to go before he figures out who he is. But you also stated in the second part, like he's unwilling to cut off ties because of the children and all that type of thing.
He's still
So
married.
yeah. I mean, he's really giving you data that no, so this may be
Now,
one to consider, grieving the loss of the relationship you hoped for.
well, it's interesting because now this person, now she's the affair partner. Now she's the person who isn't part of the family, and it's awful place to be. I think you need to take
Yeah,
care of yourself and
yeah,
really examine what it means to be loved by someone.
yeah. And we have multiple betrayed partner groups. I was mentioning before we started that Troy Love has the attachment wounds one for betrayed partners this Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Great content. Would invite you to consider that. But we have the Old Lady Posse on Tuesday
And
mornings. We've got the,
how much do those cost, Tammy?
can I finish? And then I'll tell
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry. You go ahead.
And then we've got the betrayed partner group on Wednesday afternoons Pacific time, and Thursday mornings, another one, all pro-dependent aligned. And all of those are free, just like all the men's drop-in groups are as well, on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, along with Dr. Rob's fabulous podcast series, Sex, Love, and Addiction. So,
Well, what we're
okay,
doing right now is part of
correct.
that thing that we do.
Yes,
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're
it's
absolutely
all
right.
good.
That
It's
wasn't
all
nice
good.
of me. No, but
This
we
is,
have to do repair in front of others. We can't
thank
pretend that.
you.
So I apologize.
It's all good. So we have the next question is, I'm a betrayed partner. I only recently found out my SA was cheating for the last year and a half and confronted my partner, who begrudgingly confessed after I presented proof. He admitted he is a sex addict and has prior issues and should start therapy. He's since been withdrawn, and I found out further information about more affairs. Do I push him to talk again? Do I wait for him to bring it up? I don't, or I know I can't force him into recovery. We live together and I feel like I'm in limbo. You are. So I'm sorry.
I'd love you to start that, but I do want to say that I just feel so sad for this person. So many partners, I don't, when you get slammed with things, you just had no idea. You knew what you knew, and now you know all this. And it's just so overwhelming, I think, to see this new reality in ways you never wanted to. But Tammy, I think this would be a good one for you to start with, if you don't mind.
Well, yes and no. I think all of those betrayed partner resources that I shared with you, or shared with the last person, I 100% recommend those for you as well. Then they're all free. There is support for you. This is, like you said, you're in limbo. This has rocked your world. That's really difficult. You can't force him into recovery, but as Dr. Rob can attest, the guys that come to our treatment program, it's not because they decided to be a really nice person. I'm going to learn to be good. It's like there's negative consequences. So having a negative consequence that's real, we talk about boundaries a lot, and Dr. Rob can elaborate on that more, but having, a set boundary may, show him that it's time to change. So, but support for you, regardless of what he does. And unfortunately, yeah, forcing him to talk, I would say is counterproductive, because you're more likely to just hear more information than you can process or tolerate or have support for. So there's a thing called the therapeutic disclosure. That's what, I mean, there's a lot. So keep coming back. So Dr. Rob?
Well, I'm struck by, I only recently found out. And I think, what I think a lot of times partners who only recently found out, and I know some of you won't believe this because you're in a different place, but some partners immediately move into, well, how do I fix this? How do I make this better? This is sad. This isn't what I wanted. And I think what they miss, and it might be missing from this, for this person, is their anger. Because if I had only recently found out that this person was cheating on me, and I'm going to say it in a different way, and for a year, last year and a half, and then I confronted them, and then they only begrudgingly told me that, and then there's probably a whole bunch more that I don't know about, and then he wasn't leaking forward and saying, I'm so sorry, and I can't believe I did this to you, and why aren't I dealing with this problem? And I would be thinking, why aren't I furious? Why haven't I changed the locks? So when I hear this kind of question, if you'd said 2 years in, and it would be different, but my experience was with partners in the early stages is it's very, very hard to look at the reality of what you're dealing with. And it's almost like in the beginning, it's almost like grief. It's part of grief. It's a denial. It's like, well, I'll just focus on him and make it better and we'll figure this out. And you're, or bargaining. If he does this, will I be able to do that? But what comes after that is just anger. And I think that you're going to get there. And I agree with Tammy. I think sitting in some of the women's support groups or men's, if you have a female sex addict, it's, a lot of you will say, oh, I don't want to sit around with those other losers, they're all, and I just say these people are fierce. They are fierce protectors of each other. I don't like it when the groups start to turn toward all of the things they don't like about the people they're with, because I think they can feed on themselves in a really negative way. But I think when those women are really fierce about supporting each other and growing together and connecting, that's when they're a gift. And I wouldn't think those are a bunch of victims sitting around whining. Believe me, they are not.
No, I
So
use the term resilient often because you hear, the path that they've been forced on, really. I mean, this is not of their own choosing. So this is forced on them, and they come through and they're strong, fierce, resilient.
fierce.
So you can always email me, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com, and I will be happy to connect you with more resources. Okay, next question. Hi, I'm a betrayed partner. My SA husband is 2.5 years since he's been in rehab, going to meetings 3 times a week in therapy. We never did a formal disclosure, just what he told me one night on the phone. I have now asked for a proper therapeutic disclosure with a polygraph. He is angry, blaming my therapist, crying and saying he doesn't want to re-traumatize me, and so he is not doing it for my sake. I feel like this behavior points to him still lying or withholding information. With all of your experience, what does this sound like to you?
Well, this is a tough one, right? Because I don't know these folks. So I will play this from either direction. If I had been working as a sex addict for 2.5 years and I went through rehab and I seemed to be doing well and I was going to meetings and I was in therapy and I thought I was doing well and it had been 2.5 years, I would be really concerned that going through all of this right now could completely blow up the work that we've done for 2.5 years. And I'm not sure that I'd be coming from a place that I was trying to lie to you, or maybe I might think there's some things I forgot, or even if there's something I didn't tell you, I would be really, really reticent as the addict to want to blow everything up at 2 years. And I have to ask you as a partner, is this really what you want to do at 2.5 years? If you see your spouse, one of the things I think about being a partner is you don't have to in any way accept what's happened to you. You should be furious. But at a certain point, when you're a year or two in and this person's really doing their work, your anger becomes counterproductive. You want to say, hey, I'm not as angry because I see you doing your part and we're getting more honest and hopefully the couple's getting closer. So from an addict perspective, and maybe from my perspective, what you're doing is you're maybe blowing up the work that you've already done. And if you are so suspicious and so uncomfortable and so fearful about things that you haven't heard about, I don't know, it's a tough one, Tammy. So on the other side, I would not want to be a betrayed spouse who didn't have disclosure. And I wouldn't want to be a betrayed spouse who didn't know that they knew fully what had gone on. I don't think I would run out there for polygraphs at all. I think that's a little extreme in the beginning. I'm kind of frustrated that every partner thinks that what they absolutely need is a polygraph. I think that's a myth. I think that's been perpetuated by some angry partners, but that was never how their work was organized or designed. So I wouldn't worry so much about a polygraph. I would just say, and okay. And then I go back to he's angry, he's blaming my therapist, he's crying, he's saying he doesn't want to re-traumatize me. How about this? He doesn't want to re-traumatize you as a couple. So a couple of things. Would it be helpful for you to get this? I don't know. Would it be good for your relationship 2.5 years in when he's been working really hard, if that's true, for you guys to do this? I wouldn't lean that way. Does this mean that he's lying or withholding information? I don't know, but I don't know. So I guess I would say, what is your goal here? Do you want to find out everything that ever happened that you don't know? Do you want to try to find ways to move on? Or do you really think he's lying? I don't know, Tammy, there's a lot of things here. And we have a lot of people waiting. So
Yes. Yeah.
real
No,
quick,
I mean,
it's a tough.
there's a lot of emotions. And I think perhaps the two of you with each of your therapists having a conjoint session to talk about the pros and cons and why, that might be the next step, because those two therapists will know you, and and you can lay out your case of why you want this, and he can lay out his case for why not. If you are seeing good progress, with every addict, there's bad stuff. I mean, that's how they get into recovery, is there's bad stuff. So knowing all the gory details, is it going to be helpful for you? If there's something that you absolutely need to know and you can't move on without it, then maybe. But otherwise, just understand that there's a rocky road behind you and you're moving forward.
I guess I want to add one thing, and I don't mean to go, but I'd be curious why, after 2.5 years, you now think you need this. And I might think about, did you find something? Did you see something? Did he lie about something? In other words, why now? Is always a question we ask for therapy. And you could have demanded and gotten, this clarity right after he went to residential treatment, or why is this now all of a sudden so important? And that would be, I guess, part of what I would ask myself. Let's move on, Tam.
Well, I just want to say, and if it's because everybody else is telling you that you have to do this,
right.
They're not in your shoes. There's support, but everybody's journey is different. And I'm with Dr. Rob with the polygraph. It's gotten to be so commonplace, but there's no protocol. So, okay, next question. Do you have any advice or suggestions for an SA who can't seem to find a sponsor in any of the groups that he participates in?
Well, yeah, I would say, well, Tammy, how about you? You'd be great at answering this question. Remember, everyone's online now too. So
yeah. Yes. And I was going, my first thought was, why? Why why is there no one in these rooms? So that was my, what's keeping you from being able to get a sponsor? Because in the meetings I go to, people can raise their hand and say, I need a sponsor. We also have, I know that there is peer support through our drop-in groups. And I do also know that the guys that have been in the Sex and Love Addiction 101 work groups have created some, outside the structure of the 90-minute psychoeducational lecture series and all of that, they've created some peer support groups to help support each other as well. So there are opportunities within the sex and relationship healing.com network of opportunities that may be useful to you. But if you're going to your S groups and you're raising your hand and saying, I need a sponsor, and they're temporary, you don't even have to go like, this is a lifelong commitment that I have to screen these people so well so that, it isn't. So you find somebody who can help you for this phase of your recovery. So that was my thought.
Yeah, and mine is just, it's kind of like dating. Dating is a numbers game. You have to date a lot of people, and some people give up after one or two. It's sort of like, how many people have you asked? And have you asked in an open forum? And have you said something, which I would say, like, I've been having trouble finding somebody. And that's frustrating to me. And I really need help here. Sometimes addicts need a little bit of an emotional push. Maybe someone will say, I've got time for the next 2 months, but then I want you to find someone else. As Tammy said, this isn't a lifelong commitment. And remember, the goal of finding a sponsor, not the goal, but one of the ways I would find someone is who has got something I want. If my relationship is a mess and I can see someone who's really gotten theirs back on track, and they've got 2 kids and I've got 2 kids, that'd probably be a good person for me to be with. And then if they started not being the person I wanted because I had other goals, I might find someone else. But sometimes we're a little picky, and I don't like the way they look, or can they help you? Are they a role model? Can they work with you for a few months? Go for it.
And ask. And if they say no, you won't melt into the, into
right.
the
Ask someone else.
It's rejection. It hurts, but ask the next person. So, okay, next question. I have not acted out for 18 months, but I still struggle with sexual desires. I've been working with a therapist and visit your groups often, but I can't get past the obsession. Thoughts?
Well, this is a bit of a confusing question, because on the one hand, really, because I don't know what obsession means. When you say you're struggling with sexual desires, I have sexual desires every day. I live in Southern California. I watch sexual desires jog down the street every day. And I don't say to myself, what's wrong with me for having those desires? And by the way, my spouse has lived with me long enough that I don't hear, well, why are you looking at that person? I'm human. I look. I don't stare, but I notice. Because that's what men do. That's what I do. But I don't stare and I don't make people uncomfortable. I don't make my spouse uncomfortable. So the idea of struggling with sexual desires, it sounds like you want to eliminate sexual desires. Now, there's a difference between that word and the word obsession. To me, obsession is, I can't stop thinking about the porn and I keep wanting to look at the porn and I have 3 affair partners and I keep wanting to call. It's very different. It's something related to the addiction rather than just, I don't know. To me, it'd be sort of, I'm not going to get a good example here, Tam, you're going to have to fix it. But some people like to drink socially and they drink every once in a while. All of a sudden, they hate themselves for drinking. I don't know why. Other people drink a lot and it's really a problem for them. And when they're drinking, then it is more an obsession than it is. So I think we're mixing apples and oranges. Tammy, can you give a quick thought to that one?
Well, I was thinking, we talk often about the 3 circles, and like it feels like you're in the middle circle or thinking about, like, I don't want to get to that inner circle, but it doesn't feel like you're engaging in your outer circle, which are the healthy things. If you're really living in, I was talking to Dr. Robin earlier today, and we're talking about weekends, and like he was in his outer circle. He's doing life engaging things with his spouse and with his dog, and like that's all good. And then I bet in those moments, obsession about, sexual desires is not really happening. The more well, I don't know. I shouldn't speak for you.
No,
I
not
know when
really.
I'm out running or paddleboarding or whatever, like I'm focused on what's around me and how cool is this, and all of those type of things, not my addictive brain. So that was my thought. I'm going to put in the chat after the next question, because I was thinking you may find that the sex and porn addiction 101 work group might be a good fit for you. We have another one starting May 3rd, and it's online. That might be something that might help, so I will add that. Okay, next question. My husband is a PASA. I discovered his affair 8 months ago, and when I confronted him, he admitted it. I did not suspect beforehand. My husband thinks he did not gaslight me. He admits to lying and omitting, but feels that gaslighting is intentionally manipulating partner's reality, and he says he didn't do that since he admitted it. I disagree. Can there be a PASA without gaslighting?
I would trust your gut there. I think now I may say I didn't really do this to you, but this thing called denial, and addicts do a really good job of we do a really good job of convincing ourselves that we didn't really hurt you, we didn't really mean to hurt you, we didn't hurt you in the way you're described. What we don't want to look at is the fact that we hurt you. And so what he's doing is he's like playing a naming game. He's playing a game with words. Well, it wasn't really this. It was really that. Who cares? You felt used. You felt taken advantage of. You felt like you weren't being told the truth. And isn't that enough? We don't need to. He's arguing about a name. I think that he is avoiding the reality of what he's done. And you are maybe a little too willing to be led down that road rather than staying with your, which if I were a partner, I don't care what we effing call it. You ruined my life, something like that.
And it's semantics. But he lied. He lied to himself, because he's lying to himself about, well, I didn't really hurt you. I was lying by omitting, and that's not really. So yeah, it feels like manipulating the words so that I don't have to feel so bad about what I did. Our program, our men's residential treatment program, is called Seeking Integrity, and we work against the lying and the omitting. Our clinical director uses the phrase, tell the truth and tell it faster, with the clients all the time, because it's not just lying about the sexual acting out, it's lying about all those other things as well. And so it's all part of the, the fabric of addiction that we need to address. So stopping the behavior is the first step to all of this, but then getting to the underlying lies and everything else, and is part of how we heal.
I wanted to add something to this that,
Please.
And this has happened with so many of the men, and I think a couple of guys who are in treatment actually this week, to be honest with you. But for many, many years, I've had men heterosexual men who are cheating on a woman come into my office and say, well, I've been a crappy husband. I mean, I've been an awful male partner. I've done this to her and I've done that to her. And then I'll say, well, who else is at home? And, oh, I have these lovely kids and I love my kids. And I'll ask them, well, do you think you've been a good dad? And they immediately rush in to assure me that, oh, well, I picked them up for their games and I used to volunteer for this and that. And, and I used to do their homework with them, or none of the above. And I'll say, so you think you were a good dad? Yes, I do. I was just a terrible husband. And then I have to say, well, but wait a minute, if you're not supporting the wife of your children, if she is anxious or feeling overwhelmed or feeling like what she sees as reality isn't true, if you're not supporting this woman who has to parent these children, then you're not supporting your children. And so, no, you haven't been a great father. And I say stuff, men get very angry at me because what I'm saying to them is I'm bringing to them a truth. It's really hard to deny that truth. Every hour you spend, every dollar you spent, you could have been with those kids or could have gone in their college fund or could have made there's just no way you can really make that argument. But most of the men I work with don't think about it that way. And so I'm just talking to you, I'm using this as an example of denial where I do not want to look at, and this is what men do in treatment, is one of the ways that we help them. But let me just say this, and Tammy understands this, I think. I'm not going to keep you from acting out in your life. I can't. I'm not going to be in your life. I'm not going to be there to slap your hand when you turn on the porn. But I'll tell you what treatment does. I'm going to ruin it for you. You're never going to go back to your behavior and not understand what it costs your family. You're never going to go back into that behavior and not know what it's costing you and your life and the precious time we have here. You're not going to go back in the behavior without understanding how it affects your spirituality. So part of our work, and I've always thought this way in addiction, is to ruin the addiction for people. Doesn't mean they're not going to go back to it, but they can't go back to it without really understanding what it's doing to their kids and their family. And ultimately, I think that makes them do it less. So anyway, I think this person doesn't want to look at how bad it was because he doesn't want to see that.
Well, and it's very difficult. I mean, if acting out is about not feeling, numbing out, and now having to confront and face these devastating problems, we don't have any place to escape to if we're not doing our acting out. So it is really challenging in that in between until we have good recovery tools that we can use to help us.
But there's one more thing in there. I discovered his affair 8 months ago. What is he doing about it? Has he been to a therapist? Has he been to a treatment program? Is he in therapy? Is he in 12-step meetings? It's enough to say I discovered it, but what is he doing? This would be more important to me than whatever he says or doesn't say. Is he doing things that I can actively see to change it, or he's still sitting in front of Netflix waiting for the next episode of whatever? Because it's not enough to acknowledge it and say I'm sorry. He has to do some work around it. And meanwhile, he's arguing with you about semantics. I wonder what he's actually doing for himself and his own healing.
I often say if we pursue our recovery with the same energy we pursued our addiction, we'll do really well. So, okay. Next question. Myself, SA, and my partner are about to start the journey to formal disclosure and polygraph with CSATs. So noted what Dr. Rob said about that earlier. We would like it done quickly. My partner doesn't want it dragged out. Do you know anything about 3-day intensives or cramming it into a few weeks? Can this be as effective of taking 3 months like most seem to take?
Well, there's like 9 questions in there.
Yes.
But I can basically say my experience of disclosure when I ran an outpatient program. I don't think disclosure should be a weekend. I don't think disclosure should be a whole day. I think that a couple in crisis can take little bits and then they need time to take it. So there are people I know who do disclosure weeks. I'm like, oh my God, what a nightmare. Or they have disclosure lists that are 12 pages. This is not what it's about. It's simply about sitting down and telling your partner in an inventory-like fashion. It may even feel cold to you. And that's for a purpose, because we're not saying I'm sorry, or please feel sorry for me because I hurt you. We're just wanting to give you the information. That's the goal. And it's to say that I did this, this is how many times, this is what it cost, this is when I did it, when you thought I was here or there, and it's not graphic, and that's it. So in my experience working in outpatient therapy and running it, I would say, well, I think from the day I met the addict and their partner, I would say I think it'll be about 6 to 8 weeks before we do disclosure. And what I did for that time with the person who'd been acting out was we went through a lot of intricate and involved timelines, because a lot of times we don't remember where we were, what we did. So the last thing I'd want this person to do is say, well, here it is, and then have forgotten something. So we work really hard on them stopping the behavior, but also on them coming to terms of what everything that they did do. And that can take 6 or 8 weeks. In the meantime, you should be getting support and being in a group and having other women around and other people to support you. And so when you do that disclosure thing, and I'm saying this for everyone, not for this person, we just don't want to tell you and you go stumbling out of the office and you're by yourself. It's not just about the person who's saying it, it's about you having the security and stability. So your 8 weeks is about, getting a therapist, getting a support group, all that stuff. And then when you come together, I think instead of a hour session to be a 2 hour session, and we would go through the reasons we're doing this, and we'd go through this, and you can ask your questions. And then I'd probably schedule an appointment for the next day. And how are you guys doing? And what else came up? And, and we would maybe your therapist would monitor you, your other person would monitor them. So I don't think that 3 months is reasonable. I think that doesn't make any sense to me. I wonder why someone would need 3 months. On the other hand, I think if they don't give it long enough, they're not going to know exactly what they've done. And I will put in a plug now. I will put in a plug for the online workshops that I created, because I just have a workbook on recovery. I divided into 3, and we said, guys, sit here with a coach, and basically go through this with people who understand it. And the reason I talk about that is part of that is them looking at their history of behavior. And I think to work on it in a group where they can begin to say, okay, let me take a good look at it and by the way, the guys will get on and say, wait, what do you mean? Did you, even in that kind of group, they'll challenge each other. But, and also there's one more thing, CSAT. Right. So Tammy and I know what is a certified sex addiction therapist, and there are some great ones, and there's some ones that aren't that good because they're not good therapists, not just they're good CSATs. And I won't say any names, but I will say that this process should be very clear to you, to both of you, how long it takes, what you're going to do. There shouldn't be any arguments or disagreements because they're running it. Now, you may say, I need another week or two, or can we, but within the boundaries, they should set it up. You shouldn't be, in other words, I don't know why the client would be asking these questions. You know what I mean, Tammy? So
yes, and I want to be a little devil's advocate in this too, because if all you're doing is going to your therapist for 15 minutes a week, it takes longer. What Dr. Rob was describing was a process, and like he said, we're really combing through the timelines and all of that type of thing. I hear often from therapists and other people who are like 9 months or a year into it, but it's taking that long for the person to get on board. Now, do I think that they could have benefited from treatment or something like that to help expedite the process? If an addict is doing the bare minimum and only checking off the box of going to their therapist, it's going to take longer. But for the partner to have a really clear, just like Dr. Rob was talking about, a really clear and something that there's confidence, and with the point of building a foundation of moving forward, that's what you want. And getting, this is our 5th disclosure, this is our 5th formal disclosure, that's horrible. So that's not what you want either. So having really well-trained people who can gauge where each of you are and what it's really going to take for you to both be able to do that. I'm not a huge fan of the 3-day intensives. I know people who have done them and have done them successfully. I also know that I've heard the crash and burn. So yeah, everybody gets to pick. And for the people that are, well, we just can't wait, I always wonder, what is taking a pause and doing something right really going to cost you? And sometimes there's something real, but a lot of times it's like, I just want to know. Well, of course you want to know. I mean, that's understandable, but like if you know today or know tomorrow, doesn't matter. Like getting the support to be able to hold the space may be a better choice. So, okay, next question. My wife and I are separated now for almost 2 years. We have spent some time together, and I think I'm finally getting it. As long as I can hear my wife and listen without getting defensive, but to validate her feelings. Early this morning, she sent me a text saying she was having dreams of my acting out again and acting out partners. She said she was crying and was tired of it. What can I do for her? I sent her a message that I understand her frustration and tried to validate her feelings.
well, if I were listening to that, I would say, how do I feel that this person I love is feeling overwhelmed, crying, and reminded of all of that. And I would probably tell her, I understand it's one thing to say, I understand your frustration, but I would actually say how it makes you feel. I feel really sad to see you still struggling with this. And I just so wish that you don't have to say, this isn't an I'm sorry. This is, I just so wish that, like you, that you will be able to find your way through this grief, because I care. Even though I did this, I deeply care about you. In other words, to me, I think, yes, validating someone's frustration is one step, and it's an important step. But the other part is to say how you feel about what you're seeing, and how that may, really giving her a sense of that. So, and the rest is, there's nothing else you can do for her. You're the person who caused the pain. You're the person who hurt. And I wouldn't try to go back in there with any big rescue or flowers or moonbeams, because that's not going to help. We all have to work through our own stuff at a certain point. I wish I could undo. I can't tell you how many things I've said and done that I wish I could undo, both for myself and other people, but you can't undo this. And so she's going to have to go through her own process. And the best you can do is say, I'm so sorry that you're dealing with that. And it makes me sad. And I wish that you weren't, we weren't.
That, I love that. If this is an invitation for her, if she has not already joined the betrayed partner groups, I would invite her to join those. I think she would find that to be safe support for her too. So the next question. So when my husband, porn addict, treats me like dirt while seeking out images of other women, is he idolizing strangers he never met over me? That's a good question.
Well, Tammy, I think you should start with that one.
Well, I'm kind of, I'm thinking he is idolizing, because they're just images and they're not real. And, they haven't confronted him. They haven't, I use the Charlie Brown, wah, 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 like that's, I think, how addicts feel, is that whatever we're saying, it's nagging, etc. versus, I'm bringing this to you because it's a concern in our relationship. But I mean, porn is all about escaping, and, zillions of images really fast, and, it's not real. So it's easy to go look at that and zone out, not even be, just be completely disconnected. So I don't even know if it goes to idolizing, or if it's just I'm zoning out. So what are your thoughts?
I'm just thinking, why are you asking this question? Because it's sort of like that's a good way of saying it. When, my husband's been hitting me for weeks, and I don't like the fact that he's looking at porn. I mean, why do you care about him? Why is this question important? I'm worried about you're treating me like dirt. Like, not only is this person abusing with the porn, but I'm sure treating you like dirt is not a nice thing, regardless of the porn. And I hear, again, you're kind of thinking about semantics, which is sort of, well, is he idealizing this, or is it this and that? And I'm like, he's treating you like shit. Focus on the fact that you deserve more. And I think addicts are really good at distracting you with, well, I wouldn't call it that. And you're really looking at it like this. And, we want to get you in your heads and thinking about things and words and ideas, rather than keeping you here, because if you're here, you're going to be furious at us. So we throw all kinds of things at you to get you spinning. And then you come to people like me and you say, well, is it this? Is it that? I'm like, wait a minute, but he's treating you like dirt. Let's just start there. So Tammy, anything else? Well, you mentioned anything else about that?
No, that really is, that's a very good point. And that's really the point. So, okay. What's your take on sober dating and being led by one's community?
Oh, I think that's where it's at. By the way, there's a site called deeperdating.com that a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, runs, and it's for sober people who are trying to have healthy boundaries and grow and have good relationships. And it is a dating site. I don't advertise and market for people, but I think what he's doing there is important. It's called deeperdating.com. But anyway, to answer your question, how else would you do it? I think I would absolutely take on sober dating. And I don't know what you mean by being led by your community, but to me, what it would mean is there's a group of people who get me. They know my stuff. They know when I pick the wrong people. They know the ones I picked, and they're going to lead me. Meaning, when I go out on a date and meet someone, I'm going to go back to them and say, do you want to lead me forward or back? And they may say, don't see that person again, or they may say, keep moving. So I'm using that community to reflect back to me information that, for those of us who get into dating and start idealizing people and having sex with them too soon and all that stuff. We need guides. And many of you heard me say this before, that, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when I was first entering this work as a recovering person, I didn't make choices about sex or dating on my own. I would call the person I'm working with and said, can I be sexual with this person? We've been going out for this long. And he would say no or yes. So it wasn't up to me, because, I think Tammy would say that if she had it to her making her own decisions over the years, she'd still be drinking. She had to go to people who said, nah, maybe you should go for a walk, or why don't we go to a meeting, or, and people who had more sanity than she did in the moment. And so I love the fact that you're going to lean into this community to help you make good decisions that maybe you're not so good at making on your own.
And that's how we learn. I mean, we start being, at some point you kind of go, I suspect what my posse is going to tell me is this, because we start integrating that into ourselves as well. So, but it's still always good to get check in. So, okay, next question. Hi, I was in a relationship with a guy, but he said he wants to try anal sex with me and wanted me to penetrate him too. As a typical woman, I feel like I don't know maybe if he's gay. What do you think? Nowadays, he's discarded me and says that he likes me, but I'm too childish and judgmental. I think that's a typical question. If somebody is looking for those kind of sexual acts, are they, would they be gay? So what are your thoughts?
So, well, I think the part about nowadays he discarded me and said he likes me, but I'm too child. I think we have to throw that part out, because that doesn't really relate to the first part. And I think the question much more is about, what does anal sex mean? And so, ladies, I'm so sorry for you. Truly, I am. Because if a man asks to have anal sex with you, it's really not, you might find it sensually arousing as a part of it, but it doesn't feel that good. But men have this thing called a prostate, and it's like our clitoris. I mean, to some point, that is where we experience a huge amount of pleasure, but most men don't want to admit, or have not figured out that they have this thing, which if it is stimulated by putting something in there, it will be sort of like getting something at both ends, if you will. So many men who are comfortable with their bodies might want some kind of penetration or have something there, because it's very, very physically exciting. It doesn't, however, mean you are anything. It means that you're someone who figured out that you have a prostate, and if you stimulate it, it feels really good. But just because you want to enjoy that doesn't mean that you are oriented toward a man or a woman. So, my question might just be, that's a little bit of just education, but if I was a woman and a man asked to penetrate me, I would really be thinking twice, because it's not comfortable. It doesn't feel good. It won't pleasure you. And if it's, anyway, I think that's up to you and what it means to you. I just don't want you to get hurt. I think if a man wants to be penetrated, we're looking for something extra that you might just be able to provide. And we'd love to do that with you. So, and by the way, I love, and Tammy might feel differently, I'm not going to ask you, but I love it when people play games. You're with your intimate partner and you decide, well, I want to do this, or I want to do this, or let's do this. I mean, good for you. Have a good time. Lord knows, especially for recovering people. I think adventure and fun in our bedroom with our partner, have a good time, as long as you're both agree to this. And this is sort of I'm not sure if this is okay with me. What does it mean? You're asking the right questions, but having fun, if you're going to be together and have sex with no one else, you must have fun. So there's that.
Okay, next question.
Wait, Tammy.
Go ahead.
Did that answer questions that you might have had about that?
No, I think it was, I've had a number of people talk specifically about, what does this mean? So I think that was a very helpful explanation of, it means this, not that, etc. So you can't just by one act decide somebody's orientation, etc. So
and it has, I know men who like to wear panties and have sex with their wives, and all the wives say is, stop taking my panties and go get your own, but it doesn't mean, this doesn't mean anything about their sexual orientation. It means that there's something they enjoy for sex. Sexual orientation is about who turns me on. Is it a man or is it a woman? How I play during sex doesn't say anything about my orientation.
Okay, so next question. My SA husband kept lying and covering the truth for 15 months of couples therapy and individual therapy before he lost his job and finally gave me full disclosure with polygraph. It's been 10 months since he's been sober. I struggle with feeling that everything before 10 months is a lie. He thinks differently and tells me he did love me and his memories of our life are happy. He doesn't see it as a total lie. Can you help me understand how the addict can possibly feel that our life was real when to me it was clearly all a lie because I never agreed to the life he was creating? This is so common. So, I mean, like that's grieving the loss of what you thought you had. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I think this is, I think it sort of goes along with the question, like, if you love me, how could you do this? You know, either you loved me or you did this. But if you did this, you couldn't really love me. It's sort of the same kind of question. And the reality is that all of us share so many things in our relationships, and the longer they go on, the more there are. There's more history, there's more other relationships, there's more home and sense of home. Some people have children, you know, there's church and jobs. And so, you know, and family and holidays and, you know, memories. And so, you know, our lives get pretty intertwined over the years. And it's not unusual for me to work with a couple that's been together for 3 or 4 years and this kind of stuff comes up and they say, you know, we can't do this, or a spouse will say, I'm out of here, mostly because there isn't enough time built up of togetherness and connection, and they can see where this problem is going to head them and they don't want to stay. But it's very typical. And I'd say, Tammy, you know, what I think our numbers like 80%, 80% of the people go through our treatment programs, and I just know these numbers, that's why I'm saying it. They stay in their relationship because there is so much more there. And, you know, it's like you're grieving, as Tammy said. I think grieving, there's an innocence when you love someone and you believe they'll always have your back and they'll never do anything to hurt you out there. And, you know, and when you realize that they can and they haven't, it's devastating. But I think that, you know, it depends on what you want really as a partner. You know, trust, you have no trust now. And you don't trust yourself because you're thinking, well, did I not know? Should I have known? What didn't I see? And you don't trust him because you're like, well, he was lying to me before. So why isn't he lying to me when he says he loves me? You know, and so all this stuff is kind of mixed up together. I would say if you had a meaningful relationship where you shared a lot of really good things before this happened, then there is still a meaningful relationship where you shared a lot of good things that happened underneath that. And, you know, I have feelings about, I wrote a book about this called Pro-Dependence. You know, I think couples can move beyond this kind of pain. I think they can work together, but they both have to be willing. And it's a lot of work. And it will never be the way it was. It might be stronger, but it won't be the way it was. And so, you know, I do think though that there are things that you shared. I think right now he would be all too willing to focus on that. And you would be more in a place of none of that happened. And eventually, as some of your anger goes down, I hope, and you start to see change in your partner, some of it will be more gray and not so black and white.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, the black and white of it's all or nothing. And it's not, it's the in between, but it is parsing out what's, you know, what feels real and true to you as well. But grieving, you know, is really part of it. Okay, next question. What kind of things, activities can I do with my wife to work on relationship other than marriage couples therapy? Can you give me some suggestions? This person does not indicate how long it's been since discovery, etc. So maybe give a little bit of, like, in the early stage, possibly. Let's give a
Well,
little bit of if this
I mean,
then.
thank you, I'm sorry to interrupt. If you're in the first 6 weeks after you just got found out, I don't think there's a lot of stuff you can be doing except, you know, do you want me to take the kids to school? And should I be picking something up at the store? And, you know, that's all about you're going to be doing together in the beginning, or I hate you, I'm so sorry. Um, you know, so once you're moving toward being together, which I think if you're both working on it can take 8 months or a year, when you're more not in the immediate early stages, then I think, you know, I don't know about you, but I like going for walks. I like going bike riding. Like, why does the work have to be work? You know, I had a birthday a couple of weeks ago and I can't have people over. I wasn't having a big party. We weren't going somewhere travel, and what was really nice about it was I realized how we went on walks. My husband and I, we went on bike rides. We had a few meals out for the first time. It was like, oh, and I had such a wonderful birthday because I realized I didn't how simple things could be so wonderful for me. So in the same way, I would say to you, can you do some fun and simple things that aren't related to therapy, but will give you a chance to be around each other and enjoying each other without dealing with this all the time? But that's not going to happen in the first 6 months. Probably not.
It came to mind, somebody shared a couples three circle, what's in, so we talked a little bit ago about what's in the addicts three circle, but there was also a couples three circle. So what's going to be the healthy things for the two of you as a couple? As far as marriage and couples therapy, early on, if it's just supportive, but until you've got a foundation of recovery, our experience is that it's not so effective. I had a guy call me not too long ago, and he was all focused on, she's discovered it and how can I help her? And I was like, the most you can do to help her is work on you. If you focus on her, you're just shifting the focus again from having to work on you. So the more that you're doing for you to show her that you are actually changing, because I say all the time, if lips are moving, lies, but it's your actions that, what are you doing to show her that you are becoming a person of integrity? So, okay.
And by the way, to what you just said, Tammy, what does helping her mean? Does it mean helping her be less mad at me? Does it mean helping her be less upset? Does it mean helping her feel better about, you can't do any of that stuff because she's too pissed. So helping her probably means leaving her alone, letting her go through her grief, acknowledging that you caused it and there's nothing you can do to make it better, but you're here if she needs you. And that's about it. So there's nothing making her anything feeling better kind of stuff. She may not need to feel better. She may need to be miserable because of what's happened, and that's okay. It's called grief.
Yeah.
We have time for just a couple more.
We do. We have a few. So I'm noticing that my identity was, to a certain degree, tied up in a certain friendship love addiction with a man who I've known for over 10 years. Since our friendship ended, or maybe he's taking a long break and didn't tell me, I feel kind of lost, and it's hard to make big life choices. Does this identity crisis sound odd or kind of usual for a long-term love addict?
Well, I mean, there are different ways to answer this question. On the one hand, I think if I was involved with someone for 10 years, as a friend, as a family member, as an occasional lover, just forget what you want to call it, I would have feelings for them. And it sounds like, I don't know you, Tammy, but this isn't just like a hookup. These people talked, and it sounds like they had a friendship, whatever. So there were meaningful things exchanged for you, where you got support, you got information, you helped make decisions, you had a partnership of some kind. And I think it's perfectly normal, healthy, no matter how that ended, whether they just petered out or how it ended, that to have that feeling of, oh, I miss that person to turn to. And oh, I miss having the good parts of the relationship that were good. I think that that's very healthy and normal, even if someone's really hurt us, to still think, oh, but there was this good time and that time. And when I'm lonely, who do I turn to? All of that stuff. But Tammy, I think there's something else in there that maybe you wanted to speak to, because I know you have some thoughts too.
Well, I did. The thing I thought of is, even as I'm not a love addict, but like if somebody just like disappeared and, he's taking a long break and didn't tell me, to me, that's like, he ghosted you. So, like to not have closure on it, like for me, I work to live in integrity. If I'm closing the door on a relationship or taking a long break, I need some space, and here's why I need to go work on myself or whatever, or, but I wouldn't just, I would hope I would not just, disappear. That would not feel good to me, regardless of, being a love addict or not. That just is part of the human race to me.
And I would add too that, yeah, just to what your point is, Tammy, like, what do you mean he's taking a long break? Like, what you mean is he's broken up and he wants a friendship. So this man wants to have his cake and eat it too. He doesn't want to feel badly about backing away from you and throwing you away. So he'll say it's a friendship or a break. But you know what just happened. This man dumped you. for all intents and purposes. And so I'd be focusing more on, and I thought about this as the other half, how do I choose partners? Was this the right relationship for me to spend this time and focus? Did I want to be married or committed in a different way over 10 years? Am I now too old to have children? Or whatever. I mean, I'd be more thinking about, what have I given up? Was this the right choice? And from the love addict perspective, I wouldn't want to be dating again until I was much clearer on what a commitment was, so that I wouldn't get hurt like this. And my thought about you is, if do you live in a community property state? Have you lived with this man? If you basically been married to him? These are the kinds of things I'd be thinking about. What else have we got, Tammy?
Next question is, my husband growing up with early childhood neglect and emotional incest under highly critical and controlling mom with BPD, borderline personality disorder traits, and my husband has been physically sexually acting out with the same hooker on business trips from 2007 to 2020 for 14 years, and adding additional emotional acting out sexting text app in the last couple of years. Is this love addiction or sex addiction? Is there recovery hope for us? We have been together for 30 years and married for 28. Before November of last year, I was so proud of the fact that we had that we had each other and the only mutual faithful sexual partner. A deep heartbreak for me with significant sadness, understandably. So,
Hey, Tammy, I'd ask you I'm going to take the first part of this part.
okay.
And if you wouldn't mind taking the second part, like, the part about, is there recovery for us and we've been lost? I'd love you
Sure.
to speak to that. But what I want to question this person of is my husband grew up with this, and he was emotional, and his mother was that, and he was abused. Who cares? What does that have to do with what's happened to you? That's his problem. And if he has problems and issues and emotional problems, listen, I had to go to therapy, but that didn't justify my saying, well, I have to see prostitutes and I have to. That was the reason why it happened. Because one led to the other. But as an adult making choices, I can say, well, I'm not going to do that even though I want to. And so, and by the way, this isn't one person. I mean, this isn't a bunch of people all over the place. This man's had an emotional affair with this other woman for 13 years. Sounds like she could be another wife or another partner. So I just, when I hear stories like this, I think, boy, is this woman or man way too wrapped up in how their partner got there and feeling like, oh, poor dear, this happened and that happened to them. Listen, if they're in a rubber room and they can't talk to anyone and they're yelling obscenities and they think that they can hear Jesus, I would really feel bad about them. But if they were abused in childhood and they're turning around and abusing you, and cheating on you and hurting you and lying to you for years and years and years, I don't think empathy and compassion for their childhood would be the first thing I would come up with. And so I'm more concerned that you are not more protective of yourself. Like, I don't ever want to talk to this person again, or whatever that is for you. Tammy, do you want to talk about the second part? Because
Yeah, the heartbreak is real, but regardless of whether it's a love addiction or sex addiction, is healing possible? Yes. Is it going to take some time? Absolutely. Do we have a treatment program for men like this? Yes, we do. But to Dr. Rob's point, getting support for you, all of the things that I mentioned early on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, there's an old lady posse tomorrow morning. They named it, but it's to support each other. It's a women of a certain age. You've been married 30 years. You may feel like you qualify, but there's meetings again on Wednesday and Thursday as well. Getting him professional help. I mean, there are assessment tools that a qualified CSAT trained therapist, can administer to him to help him identify what exactly is going on and help him, get help. But you getting support for you, to find that anger, to deal with that grief, to deal with the trauma. Like, here you are. You said, I was so proud of the fact that we have each other, and that whole thing, wasn't true. You had each other, but he had somebody else as well. So I hope that you lean into getting help for you. I hope he gets qualified help. I mean, like, do addicts heal? Absolutely. I see it every day. We get stories of every day, but it's going to take a lot of work. So,
and I really, have empathy for the fact when this person says, I was so proud of the fact that we had each other as the only mutual. I've been married 20 years. I'm very proud of being married for 20 years. It means something to have been married that long. It means a lot to me that we have an honest relationship. And I know people look at us like, how'd you do that for 20 years? How'd you get through COVID and not kill each other? So I understand that when you have a belief that you have a meaningful, profound relationship and you find out that it just wasn't what you thought. And you went around to friends saying, we've been married 20 years, and there were parties and, all of a sudden you look at it and say, wait, what was I even proud of? I think that's just I think that is a blow, not only to your belief about yourself or him but this thing we had that we looked at as being precious. I don't even know what that was anymore. And that's very, very painful.
Email me, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com for some support and resources. And we have so many more questions. I wish we could get to them all, but go ahead.
Let me just add that I do have a podcast, if Tammy didn't mention. It's called Sex, Love, and Addiction. We have about 600 and somehow thousand downloads, so a lot of people seem to be interested. It doesn't cost anything, but I've heard a lot of addicts say, I listened to that thing and darn, I wanted to stop off and act out, but I'm listening to you talk about this. And I've also heard a lot of partners say, I didn't understand how we'd ever work through betrayal or what intimacy even was for us. And I have a lot of people talking to me who are real professionals about that. So check out Sex, Love, and Addiction. It probably will be helpful. And Tammy, you are always helpful. So thank you for your time.
I try my darndest, but yes, thank you for this. And thank all of you for the great questions. Keep coming back. There's lots more webinars and drop-in groups, etc. this week. So check out on the events page on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Great free resources, including those podcasts. So thanks everybody. Bye.
Have a good night. Bye for now.